You think Joe Rogan's bigger than Breakfast Club?
10 times your size.
Why do you think that?
Just look at the numbers. I did 10 million views in 2 days.
On what?
On the interview. Between the clips and the interview.
Soulja Boy did 15 in a day.
That's Soulja Boy.
So Tim Pool loses it over Charlemagne's attack on Joe Rogan. Now, Tim Pool delves into Charlemagne's claim that his show rivals Joe Rogan's in popularity, saying that, the Breakfast Club is just as popular as the Joe Rogan Experience. Now, Tim Pool plays a clip of Charlemagne discussing with Andrew Schultz, who tries to bring up the actual numbers. And despite this, Charlemagne insists that, his show is comparable. And Tim Pool then breaks down the stats, noting Charlemagne should have stayed silent on the matter. Now, this discussion wraps up with Tim Pool suggesting that James O'Keefe should appear on Rogan's show, but shifts to serious conversation on different issues. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this clip with Tim Pool talking about Charlemagne.
We got this one from Ali London. Charlemagne the God, how is the left handling this Joe Rogan show? Well, they're claiming Joe should take time out of his day, fly to Kamala Harris to do the interview. She's very busy. She's a VP. You should do it, Joe. And Joe's like, I don't want to do it. But this is an amazing clip. Charlemagne the God from the Breakfast Club tells Andrew Schultz that his show is comparable to Joe Rogan. Listen to this, and then I'm going to debunk it in 2 seconds.
There's no bigger place to go in the business than Joe Rogan right now.
The Breakfast Club is pretty big.
Fam.
No.
Fam, stop it. Stop it.
You think Joe Rogan's bigger than Breakfast Club?
10 times your size.
Why do you think that?
Just look at the numbers. I did 10 million views in 2 days.
On what?
On the interview. Between the clips and the interview.
Soulja Boy did 15 in a day.
That's Soulja Boy.
And who was Soulja Boy at that time?
Exactly. Soulja Boy is one of the most well-known artists in the world. Hold on, you really think that your platform is bigger than Rogan?
Just as big, easily.
Come on, bro. Let's look at the recent interviews on Breakfast Club compared to the recent interviews on Rogan. Let's have a nice...
Yo, it's absolutely wild for Charlemagne the God to be like, as big. Just like, why did you even interject that? He's like, there's no bigger place to be than Joe Rogan. Just go, okay.
Yeah, ego's a good tool if you can control it.
Absolutely.
I had to stop here, but I mean, let's be honest here. But the Breakfast Club is good and it's on merit and everything to a particular audience and stuff, but Joe Rogan Experience actually, the show Joe Rogan Experience, the podcast itself, reaches out to millions of people at different platforms and everything, to different audiences of different races. Whereas Breakfast Club, even though Charlemagne is putting out this for every race, actually it's like the majority race are African Americans or Latinos and stuff. Basically, people who embrace black culture and stuff. All right. With black culture updates as well. And the fact of the matter is that, Joe Rogan Experience has a lot of people, not only white people, but black people, Asians, Latinos, Hispanics, and even, Arab Americans out there are watching and listening to the show itself too. And it's like a lot of people enjoy it. Now, let's be real. The Breakfast Club is popular, but it's not Joe Rogan Experience popular. I had to go ahead and put my 2 cents in there. Let's go ahead and get right back into this whole tempo discussion.
Absolutely wild.
Yeah,
well,
somebody that calls themselves the God is really in charge of their ego.
I just want to put it out there. My show is also just as big as Rogan.
Mine too.
Yes,
Have
me
you seen it?
as well.
I don't even have a podcast.
You guys are all
anymore. It's as
deluded.
big as
Okay,
Rogan.
guys.
At this point, you don't even need a podcast to be as big as Joe Rogan.
Look at this. This is from Chartable, showing Apple Podcasts and Spotify rankings for the Joe Rogan Experience. What do you notice about Joe Rogan's ranking in every country and on both platforms? Would someone like to read the numbers of Joe Rogan's show?
Says, I'll read them. Number one, 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 number one.
Joe Rogan has been number one for a long time. He is consistently on the top. Sometimes he's not, but he's usually number one across the board for everything. Here's the Breakfast Club. 105 Apple All Podcasts and 198 Spotify. Now, hey, that's great.
It's good.
I'm going to be honest. I didn't know the Breakfast Club was that low, but Charlemagne, no. And Tim Pool is actually about to go ahead and expose this.
Good. Those are good numbers.
Respect, because we're on Spotify or on Apple, I think we're number like 160 last I checked. So Charlemagne's bigger than us. Bravo, brother, bravo. That's a great show. But you're number 105 to Joe Rogan's 1.
Maybe he thinks the bigger the number, the more ahead you are.
Let me explain something, Tim Pool, the god. I would like to say these numbers, you can't bank on math because math is racist, and numbers are just numbers.
It's more about
That's
how you
true.
feel.
2 plus 2 equals 5.
You know?
Yeah, yeah.
The only reason anybody ever said otherwise because they were racist.
Yeah, that's
White
exactly
supremacy,
it.
you know,
Those
that's how it works.
numbers are numbers.
So what Schultz was pointing out is that Charlemagne the God had Soulja Boy, who's a super famous person, on his show and said, I got 15 million overnight on that episode. And he's like, yeah, but me, Andrew Schultz, a relative nobody, not that he's saying that, but compared to Soulja Boy, went on Rogan and I got 10 million overnight.
Yeah.
Like, you put a rando on Rogan, you get 10 million overnight. You put a super famous guy on the Breakfast Club, you get 15
And in
million.
Schultz's defense, he's not a rando.
No, not anymore because of Rogan. Rogan launched his career doing Rogan's show. Rogan has launched so many people's. Theo Vaughn,
Yep.
I mean, Callan and Brennan Schaub's show. But
Numerous.
Tim Pool, even. You know what I
dude,
mean?
Tim, he sent your show like ×3. I think you had like 300,000 subscribers. You went on his show and had like 1 million the next day.
We had, I had 200 on youtube.com/Timcast and like 120 on Timcast News. I go on his show. Instantly, my main channel's at 900. My other channel's at 400.
Instantly.
I'm gonna
Within like 3 weeks.
I'm gonna start spamming him. I'm ready to get my career going.
Yeah, see, this is why everybody wants to go on Rogan.
He
It's why
chooses you.
Andrew, well, it's everybody wants to go on his show because he is it's the biggest show.
Yeah.
So Tim Pool is giving Joe Rogan his credit, and Tim Pool actually expresses how the whole Rogan experience made a lot of people get their career starts taking off and stuff. Now, a lot of people would like to see Tim Pool on Rogan Experience, I'm sure. But the fact of the matter is, like Tim Pool himself, I mean, he's discussing right here that, you know, the numbers basically proves Charlemagne's points about the Breakfast Club being as popular as Joe Rogan Experience incorrectly. Now, I'm pretty sure Charlemagne might have walked back his words recently. I'm not sure because I haven't watched the Breakfast Club lately, but, you know, the fact of the matter remains that Tim Pool is actually shown that the Breakfast Club is not as popular as the Joe Rogan Experience, because Joe Rogan, as I stated, not only has people reaching out from, you know, different parties and different racial backgrounds and all of that, but it's like, you know, people are basically tired of the whole, you know, mainstream media narrative. And, you know, Tim Pool is actually showing like the actual numbers and data that the Breakfast Club is not as popular as, you know, the Joe Rogan Experience. Now, I don't know what made Charlemagne say that, but Tim Pool actually discusses it. He even brought up the fact that there's people out there who got their start thanks to, you know, Joe Rogan Experience, got their podcast launched and everything. But the simple fact of the matter is, if Tim Pool were to actually go on the JRE, then basically he probably reached up to like 5 million subscribers on YouTube and other platforms. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue with this discussion.
And it's just wild that anybody's going to be like, I'm as big as Joe Rogan.
He doesn't play games either. He doesn't go to the person because they asked him to. Like, he picks who he likes.
He does. I'll tell you. So during COVID, he followed me and started like sharing some of the COVID stuff from Melbourne. And so I thought, oh, that's great. I'm going to remember when I go to America. And then when I messaged you that I'm coming, and in fact, you were helping me out at that time. But I messaged you, I got a visa, I'm coming on. And then it was the biggest like knockdown to my ego where he just didn't answer me.
He does that with his friends sometimes too.
Well, I mean, come on, dude. I bet his phone is
one
constant.
He's a
Yeah.
busy man.
I bet he looks at his phone and it's just
Yeah,
a stream of text nonstop.
But doesn't he know I'm the number one in
That's right.
Melbourne, Australia?
Yeah. You know who I think he should have on? I'm never going to hit him up and ask him about any of this stuff. Like, because people have hit up guests on this show being like, can you get me on Timcast or whatever? And nobody will do it. And I wouldn't do that. But James O'Keefe should definitely go on the Joe Rogan Experience.
I'm shocked he hasn't.
Because he's talked about him too. He's talked about his work.
James is great. Project Veritas was great. OMG's great.
He's done a lot of big work, and whether you like or don't like him, he's impactful. And I'm surprised.
And I mean, that's up to Joe Rogan. Now, is Joe Rogan really familiar with James O'Keefe like as much as them? I'm not necessarily sure. I didn't watch all the episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience, but Tim Pool does make a good point that, you know, maybe he should have James O'Keefe on the show, but that might not be until, like, you know, James O'Keefe actually breaks a big, huge headline and stuff where, you know, Joe Rogan will actually have him up there. But Tim Pool, excuse me, he does make a good point where he should have him on the show and everything. And Tim Pool does go ahead and break down with others up here about why that should happen.
It's important work too.
Seriously, I'm surprised he's not been on Joe's show.
He just did. He was on last night actually. On
I was
on our
listening
show.
to it on the
and he's launched a new movie, Line in the Sand.
Yeah,
lineinthesandmovie.com.
Interviewing the border patrol agents.
It's
I heard about that. It's
crazy.
wild.
Yeah, James is probably is there a better journalist right now in the United States?
He's in a tier
Consequential,
of his
what-
own. He's
I'm gonna say 2 words: Lisa Guerrero.
I don't know.
that joke was funny because I didn't know who that was.
She's
All right, if you enjoyed what I shared in this video, go ahead and smash the like button, share this video far across social media. And if you haven't done so already, enjoyed all the content that I put out there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, click the bell notification so that way you'll be notified of future uploads and updates. Till then, peace.